the remote viewing and the bilocation were both things that I recalled myself personally from the Monroe Institute Talent and Gifted program in my grammar school. But more so, I'd say,
You had that in your grammar school?
yes, ma'am. You're familiar with these programs. So my familiarity comes from first experiencing it directly as a child. And from that perspective, I assure you it made no sense.
Yeah, I understand that because
because it makes no sense. They're not explaining to you what they're doing.
No, they're not.
Asking you questions that from the perspective of a child, it makes zero sense when somebody says to you the numbers of a coordinate
Mm-hmm.
and then says, does that make you think of water or not? Does that make you think of mountains or not? And then they assure you, well, it doesn't matter what your answer is. There's no answer that you can give that is wrong. So as an intelligent child, I was sitting there going, what is this lunatic lady talking about? This makes zero sense. Now, having an adult mind and hearing the potential of what was going on that wasn't being presented to me, it makes it click from my previous perspective what the heck was going on.
Oh, yeah, that would.
Yeah. It's like, oh, now there's like this light at the end of the tunnel that makes sense of, because for me, we would go to the library almost weekly, I think, if not twice a week. We would get pulled out of the regular classrooms and we would, we'd be running. They would, the drill, they fill your head, you guys are the smartest kids and blah, blah, blah. And
yeah, I do know the drill.
So we're running, we'd be, and we're just kids. So you'd running down the hallway and we're like high-fiving each other because we think like, we're just getting out of class. I was a little derelict, so I didn't really give a darn. I'm like, I'm getting out of class. We're going to go to the crazy library right now where they had very pretty, like 20-some-odd-year-old girls that would sit at the table by yourself with the girl, and they would proceed to go through these questions, and they had headphones, and they would do all the Monroe Institute stuff, but like it was so obviously a program, and they would, the girl is very comforting and assuring, and everything you do is okay, and there's nothing to be nervous about. There's no wrong answers. And it was just like, it seemed like Bizarro World to me. It was like, it seemed ridiculous. It was like, I don't know what these people are up to. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish in the slightest. But I'm going to play along because it gets me out of class. At the time, I couldn't make sense of it. So it seemed ridiculous to me. Like now as a tradesman, I feel like everything I do, I should be able to see the fruits of my labor. I guess I have that logic. So to me, the room lacked that logic. It was just like, it seemed like a waste of my time. It showed no fruit to me.
Maybe it did to them.
Oh, totally. I get that now, But the drugs thing with these programs, the thing that freaks me out in my experience was, I remember very specifically the first thing that happened when we showed up to the library and I sat down with the pretty girl was I would lean my head back and she would approach me, and I was given the same warning to make sure that I'd never got it on my uniform because it'll stain your uniform and you'll get in trouble, and or out them, I guess, for what's on your uniform. But they would give me eye drops and put something in my eyes before we started. And I remember that it happened fast. And I also remember that I always rushed when they would release us from the library. I always wanted to get out into the lobby as fast as possible because the light coming in the front lobby would be extremely yellow still for a while. And I didn't have a lot of time before whatever it was that they did would wear off and everything would go back to the standard color spectrum. And I just remember really liking that part. Like it was like, all right, we can go. I want to get out to the lobby really fast because I'm going to have, a couple more minutes before they're going to notice I'm back in class and before this stuff is going to wear off and it's cool. So I found doing my Stargate research that in the 1983, 84, 85 period that I would suggest things got very weird out on Long Island where I was living and technically in the program, that you can find in the paperwork and you know how to go to the site and do the searches. Put your last name in there. And watch how many other people with my same surname are working those same programs. You have literally the head of Los Alamos National Labs, Hecker, the head of SRI, Hecker, the lead field agent doing the interrogative work for SRI on the East Coast, Hecker. I mean, it's all in the paperwork. I mean, that's the stuff that's blowing my mind right now, because there were points in time where I could say, you know, what are the odds that I'm involved with this? It's increasing by the day. Like every time I go on that site and I click the, you know, the search button, it's like, you've got to be kidding me, what's in here? And it's been declassified for quite a bit. And this is what always amazes me, because everybody always says that, you know, if this is true, we would know about it.
If this was true, they would never tell anybody about it.
Well,
I've been surprised by how much they've declassified.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, is that to me, I don't think this stuff has really been that hidden for a very long time for anybody that wanted to do due diligence. It's been kind of just below the surface for anyone that wanted to just, you know, wipe away a little bit of the dust. They didn't really do a good job of hiding these programs when they would run away from them. There was a lot of human error.
There was a lot of human error, and there was a lot of sheer arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
They thought they were so good at what they were doing that it didn't matter who saw it.
Mm-hmm.
That no one would believe it anyway. In the ultimate theater of trying to stop the kidnapping that goes on in my program, that doesn't have a place in the attempts to stop the kidnapping. My program used rape and torture to mind fracture small children. Mm-hmm. And those are, if they're not capital offenses, they should be. And that needs to be stopped. But it was carefully explained to me that the techniques used by the CIA on me, they had gotten from the ancient and ongoing secret societies that are kind of under the umbrella term Illuminati. Mm-hmm. That there are at least 30 of these groups, and that they have different motives, different bloodlines, different agendas.
Would this be what most folks refer to as like SRA groups?
That's part of the umbrella.
10-4? Okay, it's under the umbrella.
Okay, it's one of the 30.
Okay.
So they had learned their techniques from them as a way to bring out psionic abilities and to create altars so there was deniability. Mm-hmm. So
plausible deniability is one of the biggest goals of like so many governmental departments.
They were referring to mind fracture. They were referring to any process that would activate the psionics. Psionics is a fancy science word for what most people call psychic abilities.
Yeah.
And they have been with us always, mm-hmm. because that's part of our genetic heritage.
Part of our hidden history.
And there have been groups throughout history who have tried to eliminate the part of the population who was talented at it.
On Long Island, Montauk in particular, the light that I was referencing was the signal.
Oh, so, yeah.
That literally, you know, at the point that they figured out that this was out there, I mean, that was game on. Then they just started to have to figure out the process to look and find them. And that's in the paperwork trail. They go over this, mm-hmm. you know, learn there's a faction of society that has this skill set. and they learn how to find them.
Yeah.
On Long Island, they literally started cranking out a phone number.
Did they really?
Transmitting a phone number out, and when you would finally just call that number, I mean, bam, they got you. You know, everyone's like, oh, it's the virus. Oh, it's 5G. Oh, it's the food supply. Oh, yes, yes, yes.
But the virus is real.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the excuse for locking us in our house.
It's a wonderful excuse for that. I mean, it's as real as any other virus. Is it as deadly as every other virus? Yeah, the ones that aren't deadly. I mean, it's not really killing a lot of people. Should we all be locked in our house? I would say not. Is the virus real? Yes. Should I be locked in my house? No.
My solution is to disband the CIA.
I agree with that.
The CIA controls the drug trade. The CIA controls human trafficking. The CIA controls arms trade. It goes through, they took over from the Jesuits doing assassinations and coups, and in my personal opinion, they are the most evil agency on the planet, and disbanding them would be a great thing.
I agree. I have worked alongside people that have definitively had a rich history with that organization, and it blows my mind the audacity of tasks that they do. I mean, the stuff just listed, I mean, yes, they're doing all of those things. You know, those are extremely benign things that you just listed compared to the other things they do.
Yeah, well, I can.
Those sound terrible to the average Joe.
I can prove they do those things.
Correct. Understood. Right.
I can't prove the less benign things.
Fair enough.
But
we actually can with the paperwork trail from Stargate.
The agency itself is pure evil. And when I've presented that in conferences, because I do have a presentation that I do in conferences on the declassified MK programs that are in use. And when I get to the end of it, people argue with me and tell me, oh, the CIA couldn't possibly be doing that. We would know about it.
But they are doing it.
There are millions of TIs, targeted individuals, all over the world, including in China, that are complaining of the very things that I just talked about.
I've had people say that a million times, and it just makes me laugh because their ignorance is the answer, because they've just proved themselves wrong because the program is happening and you didn't know about it.
Well, there's one program that I talk about in my presentation called Project Satan. It's about taking the brain tracings of people who are in pain and overlaying it on your brain. You have no physical anything wrong with you other than this brain pattern is overlaid on yours. And people have literally died from the pain of it. And the whole point of the program at his level was to see how long it would make a person take to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And that's talked about in the movie Total Control, which was what, 2004? It's a movie about a guy who wakes up one day and finds out it's real. And you go through, and the movie is even correct about how to block it. So what they do is they take those copper scrubbies and they open them up and they use them to line a baseball cap.